Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a 16-year-old girl who works at a local supermarket, and I have cerebral palsy and vision impairment. It's been quite a journey getting to where I am now. Growing up with disabilities wasn't easy. The cerebral palsy affects my motor control, particularly in my hands, making them appear different and affecting my grip strength. My vision impairment means I need to take extra time to focus on things, especially when they're new or moving. But my parents always pushed me to be independent, saying that having disabilities doesn't mean I can't live a full life. When I turned 16, I decided I wanted to work. My mom was worried at first, but my dad supported the idea. He said work experience would be valuable for my future. After several rejections from other places, this supermarket gave me a chance. The store manager actually has a cousin with cerebral palsy, so she understood my situation better than most. They placed me at the express register, which usually means handling fewer items per customer. They also gave me a badge that clearly states my disabilities. It helps avoid awkward situations with customers who might wonder why I move a bit slower than other cashiers. Most people are actually really nice about it. Some even tell me I'm inspiring, though, honestly, I'm just trying to live my life like anyone else. The incident happened during the Christmas rush. The store was packed, lines were long, and everyone was stressed. I was at my register when this woman came up with a trolley that was definitely too full for the express lane. But since we were so busy, I decided to help her anyway. Her cart had several huge watermelons, each weighing over 10 kilos. We can't scan them with the hand scanner, so I have to lift them onto the register. It's challenging for me, but I've learned techniques to manage it safely, even if it takes a bit longer. I was about halfway through her items when she suddenly asked, in the most condescending voice, if I was blind and why I was so slow. She then rudely questioned why my hand looked the way it did. Her voice was dripping with disgust and impatience. The customers behind her shifted uncomfortably, and I felt my face getting hot. Before I could respond, my boss, who was helping another customer, whirled around. She asked the woman with pointed sarcasm if she herself was blind, while pointing directly at my badge. The woman squinted at it, and her face went through several shades of red. My boss wasn't finished, though. She went on to explain in a deliberately slow and patronizing tone that my badge clearly stated my disabilities. She pointed out that I was doing an excellent job managing the woman's oversized order in the express lane, which she shouldn't even be using. She then asked with mock concern if the woman would like an explanation of what an express lane was. The woman started stammering, trying to defend herself, but my boss cut her off. She asked if the woman had failed to notice the badge, read the express lane sign, or think before speaking, or possibly all of the above. Several customers in line started snickering, and a few even clapped. The woman looked around desperately, probably hoping to find someone sympathetic to her situation. But all she got were disapproving looks. My boss then told her that I would continue scanning her items at my pace, and if that wasn't acceptable, she was welcome to leave her groceries and shop elsewhere. The woman just mumbled something under her breath and stared at her shoes for the rest of the transaction. When she was leaving, my boss called out one final jab, reminding her to observe the express lane item limit next time, pointing out that it was posted in large print, especially for her benefit. After the woman left, several customers came up to me throughout my shift to tell me how well I handled the situation and how much they admired my work ethic. One elderly lady even asked to speak to my boss, just to compliment me. My boss later told me that the woman had tried to complain to customer service about being humiliated, but the service desk manager, who had witnessed the whole thing, simply handed her a copy of our store's zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior and suggested she might be more comfortable shopping elsewhere in the future. I've been working at the supermarket for 6 months now, and while I've had my share of difficult customers, this was the first time someone was so blatantly rude about my disabilities. But you know what? For every one person like her, I've met dozens of wonderful people who treat me with respect and kindness. And having a boss who stands up for her employees like that, it makes dealing with the occasional entitled person much easier. The woman hasn't been back to my register since then, though I've seen her in the store a few times. She always chooses a different line, even when mine is empty. Funny how that works. Let me start from the beginning. 3 years ago, I bought my dream house in a beautiful neighborhood. It wasn't part of any homeowners association when I purchased it, which was actually one of the main selling points for me. The previous owner had specifically kept it independent, and I intended to do the same. Everything was perfect for the first year. I maintained my property well, kept my lawn neat, and generally minded my own business. Then came the news that neighboring communities were merging to form one large homeowners association, and they wanted our street to join. Most of my neighbors gave in to the pressure, but I stood my ground. The homeowners association president, who I'll call Karen, started showing up at my door almost weekly. During one of her visits, she tried to convince me that I was bringing down property values by not joining, claiming that everyone else had signed up. I simply told her that my property was well maintained and that I wasn't interested in joining. She then complained about my Halloween decorations from the previous year being excessive, but I reminded her that this was my private property and that I wasn't part of their association, so I didn't need to follow their rules. That's when the harassment started. They began issuing me fake violation tickets for the most ridiculous things. $150 for having a bird feeder, $200 for parking my own car in my own driveway because it wasn't a luxury vehicle, $300 for having wind chimes that were too noisy. I kept all these tickets as evidence of harassment and filed complaints with local authorities. The police said they couldn't do much since it was a civil matter, but I documented everything anyway. Then my aunt passed away in Ohio. I had to leave for the funeral, which was going to take about 5 days with travel time. Before leaving, I installed security cameras and asked my elderly neighbor to keep an eye on my house. Little did I know that the Homeowners Association was planning something sinister. A massive storm was forecast to hit our area while I was away. I wasn't too worried since my house had weathered worse storms before. What I didn't expect was for the Homeowners Association to use this as cover for their crime. When I returned home, there was nothing left. My house had been completely destroyed, with clear signs of an explosion. The police initially ruled it as a gas leak, but something didn't add up. My elderly neighbor approached me the next day. She told me she had seen something strange the night of the storm. She explained that she couldn't sleep because of the thunder and had noticed flashlights around my house. When I asked if she could identify anyone, she mentioned that she had recorded some of it on her phone, thinking they might be looters. The footage was dark and shaky, but there was one clear frame that showed the Homeowners Association vice president's face, illuminated by a lightning flash. He was carrying what looked like equipment toward my house. I took this evidence straight to the police. They finally launched a proper investigation, and what they found was shocking. Text messages between Karen and other board members revealed their entire plan. They had tampered with my gas line during the storm, hoping the explosion would be blamed on the weather. The investigation uncovered even more. They had been running a scheme across the neighborhood, pressuring independent homeowners to join by creating false violations and threatening legal action. My resistance had made me a prime target. In the end, Karen and 4 other board members were arrested for numerous charges including attempted murder, destruction of property, and criminal conspiracy. The investigation also revealed they had embezzled over $200,000 from the Homeowners Association funds. My insurance company sued them for the full value of my house plus damages. The court awarded me triple damages due to the malicious nature of their actions. Karen and her accomplices are now serving lengthy prison sentences. The Homeowners Association was dissolved after this scandal, and our neighborhood returned to being independent. My new house, built with the settlement money, is even better than the original, and I made sure to install the biggest, brightest holiday decorations the following Christmas, just because I could. The other neighbors who had been intimidated into joining the Homeowners Association finally spoke up about their own experiences of harassment and extortion. It turned out Karen and her board had been running their little kingdom through fear and intimidation for years. But they picked the wrong person to bully this time. My elderly neighbor who recorded the footage became my closest friend. We now have weekly coffee meetings where we laugh about how Karen's attempt to get rid of me ended up destroying her own little empire instead. I still have those ridiculous violation tickets framed in my new home office. They serve as a reminder that standing up to bullies, even if they come disguised as concerned community leaders, is always worth it. I'm a 25-year-old lawyer who recently decided to have a serious conversation with my parents about their behavior towards me. My parents always had this weird dynamic where they'd praise my intelligence one minute and treat me like I couldn't tie my own shoes the next. They'd brag to their friends about their brilliant daughter who's going to be a lawyer while simultaneously undermining every decision I made in my personal life. The breaking point came after a series of incidents that just couldn't be ignored anymore. I was in the middle of interviewing for new positions at different law firms, and after each interview, my parents would call me. My mom would ask how it went, and before I could even finish saying I thought it went well, she'd cut me off to criticize me about maintaining eye contact, saying I probably messed up the interview. My dad would join in, telling me I should have worn the blue suit instead of the black one, and that no one would hire me if I kept making such stupid decisions. This was just the beginning. When I started dating my boyfriend, who happens to be from a minority background, things got even worse. My mom told me I was lucky he was dating me and that if I broke up with him, I'd end up with some loser. When I told her this was inappropriate to say, she claimed she was just being honest and that I should be grateful for her advice. The final straw was when I was groped on public transit. Instead of showing concern, my mother turned it into gossip material, treating it like an entertaining story at family gatherings. She'd start telling everyone about what happened to me on the subway, and when I tried to stop her, telling her it was private and traumatic, she'd just ignore me and continue. So I finally sat them down for a serious talk. Their reaction? Pure entitled chaos. My mom accused me of being psychotic, saying my brain was wrong. My dad joined in, saying I was scaring them with this behavior. Then came the waterworks. My mom started crying dramatically, and I, being the emotionally manipulated daughter I am, started crying too. But this time, I wasn't backing down. They tried deflecting with ridiculous complaints. My dad complained about how I never checked my mail promptly when I was home. My mom accused my boyfriend of turning me against them, claiming he was controlling me. When I pointed out that she'd accused every minority partner in our family of being abusive without evidence, she said she was just concerned. She tried to justify herself by saying she never felt defensive about my father like I did about my boyfriend. I called her out on this, asking if she was admitting she didn't even like my dad, and if that was really her defense. I decided to use my legal training to systematically dismantle every argument they made. When I finished, my mom's final argument against my boyfriend was, wait for it, astrology. Yes, apparently the stars said we weren't compatible. Then she tried to drive a wedge between me and my grandmother, who's been my rock through all this. She told me my grandmother was stupid and that I shouldn't trust her. I pointed out how interesting it was that everyone who supported me suddenly became either stupid or controlling in her eyes. Finally, after hours of debate, they admitted that yes, these things did happen, but they couldn't help playing the victim. My dad claimed I'd made my mother depressed, while my mom said the same about my dad. They both brought up their abusive fathers, trying to justify their behavior. I work with parents struggling with crack addiction who show more genuine concern for their children's well-being than my parents sometimes do. In the end, we reached a sort of agreement. They promise to listen when I tell them they're being hurtful. But here's the real victory. I finally stood up for myself, and I made it clear that their manipulative behavior wouldn't work anymore. I even started setting boundaries with them, like hanging up the phone when they start their criticism spiral. The next time my mom tried sharing private information about me at a family gathering, I stood up and made it clear that if she wanted to share personal stories, I could tell everyone about her embarrassing incident at last year's company Christmas party. She's never shared my personal business again. I still feel exhausted from that conversation, but it was worth it. I've been working at this local family restaurant for about 3 years now. Started right after high school when I realized college wasn't really my thing. The pay is decent, especially with tips, and I've worked my way up to being one of the senior servers. My manager trusts me with training new staff and handling difficult situations, which happens more often than you'd think in the restaurant business. Everything was running smoothly until about 3 months ago when we hired this new server from Georgia. She's attending the local university here up north and needed a part-time job. At first, I thought she seemed nice enough, but things started getting interesting pretty quickly. From day one, she laid on this exaggerated Southern Belle persona so thick you could cut it with a knife. Every single customer was honey, sweetie, sugar, or darling. And I mean every single one. She'd hover around tables long after delivering food, telling stories about her hometown or asking personal questions while other customers were trying to get her attention. One day I had to point out that tables 4 and 7 were trying to get her attention. She just brushed it off, saying something about blessing their hearts and explaining how she was in the middle of sharing her mama's peach cobbler recipe with another table. The worst part was watching customers squirm uncomfortably while she rambled on. They'd give short answers, look at their phones, or even try to take bites of food to hint that they wanted to eat in peace. But she never picked up on these signals. Our manager had to pull her aside multiple times about this behavior. During these conversations, the manager would explain that her primary responsibility was serving customers efficiently and that her small talk was causing delays and affecting other servers' sections. She'd always respond with some comment about giving customers authentic Southern hospitality. Things came to a head 2 weeks ago when a customer finally snapped. This businesswoman in a suit was trying to eat her lunch while working on her laptop. The Southern server brought over her iced tea and started going on about how they make it sweet by default back home. The customer finally had enough and snapped at her, telling her not to call her honey and that she was trying to work. Later that day, she came to me nearly in tears, wondering why she was making less in tips than everyone else. She insisted it must be discrimination against her accent, claiming everyone thought she was just some dumb Southern girl. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her accent at all. I told her she was taking too long with each table, and that people here aren't comfortable with strangers using pet names because it comes across as condescending. She got defensive, saying she wouldn't be rude like us Northerners because that would just make her tips even worse. I attempted to explain that it wasn't about being rude but about reading the room and respecting boundaries. I pointed out that when she spends 15 minutes chatting with one table, her other customers get frustrated waiting for their orders. She responded by accusing me of not understanding Southern culture, insisting that being friendly was how she was raised. I tried one last time to explain that this wasn't about being friendly or unfriendly, but about doing the job efficiently and respecting different regional expectations. She stormed off after that and started avoiding me completely. Last week, she got another complaint from a table of regulars who waited 20 minutes for their check while she was telling another table about her grandmother's church bake sale. The final straw came yesterday when our manager called her in for a performance review. The manager explained that several customers had written to corporate about the uncomfortable interactions and slow service. When given a final warning to either adapt her service style to meet local expectations or find another job, she chose to quit on the spot. But when she left, she made a dramatic announcement to the entire restaurant, calling us all cold-hearted Yankees who wouldn't know genuine hospitality if it hit us in the face. The funny thing is, our tips have actually gone up since she left. Turns out most customers just want their food served promptly and to be left alone to enjoy their meal in peace. Who would have thought? And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.